Okay, we'll start with this. On the eve of what will be Shakur Stevenson's final fight under his existing Matchroom deal, the question is, should he stay with them? Should he stay with Matchroom Boxing? Is there any real reason to stay with them beyond the Zepeda fight? And if so, what is it? Shakur Stevenson's 2-fight deal with Matchroom Boxing will expire after his next fight, raising questions over his next steps. Shakur signed the 2-fight deal after the expiry of his existing top-rank deal. The aim was to expand his global profile with a view to target the biggest fights. Shakur was set to face Joe Cordina on the first fight under Matchroom, but that broke down after Stevenson's hand injury. He faced off against Joe Padley in a fight that failed to excite the fans despite Shakur's 9th-round stoppage win. Stevenson now faces one of the toughest fights of his career on paper when he takes on William Zepeda. The latter is a knockout artist who stands at 33-0 with 27 KOs to his name. Zepeda has stopped 3 out of his last 5 opponents as he vowed to do the same to Shakur. The winner will aim to get a unification against the WBA lightweight champion Gervonta Davis. Shakur has been chasing the Davis fight for some time. However, PBC is known for making fights in-house, meaning Matchroom may find it tough to make that fight. PBC and Top Rank have also indicated their desire to work closer together, meaning Shakur may have to leave Matchroom to secure that fight. However, Shakur has also indicated he's open to facing other big names, which Matchroom could help. There are persistent links with the likes of Devin Haney and Conor Benn. While that may be the case, those are welterweight fights, meaning there would have to be a catchweight involved. Regardless, Eddie Hearn was focused on keeping Shakur. Pretty simply, we had a 2-fight deal with Shakur Stevenson. That never changed. The communication between us never suggested anything different. After the Zepeda fight, the contract's up, the deal's up, and I'd like to think we extend. I've got a great relationship with Shakur. Even though he recently beat me at table tennis in New York, I want to promote him for the rest of his career. But a lot of the time, it really depends on the deal you have for the fighter. Loyalty's really nice and respected in the sport, but as I learned with Canelo, and rightfully so, we did 7 or 8 fights with Canelo. Then, all of a sudden, we didn't have anything for him anymore. As much as he likes us, he's off. And that'll be the same with Shakur. Now we're talking about potentially extending that relationship, but it will all be built on what he can offer. But if he goes elsewhere after Zepeda, good luck to him. I'll still be a massive fan and admirer, Hearn said. So what would be the virtues of staying with Matchroom at this point in the juncture? They talk about the Gervonta Davis fight as if Shakur or any of these other guys have had luck getting Gervonta Davis. See, Teofimo didn't get him. Devin didn't get him. Shakur's not gonna get him. He's about to fight Lamont Roach. And after that, he's supposed to go back into talks to fight Jake Paul. So if the only reason you'd leave Matchroom is in pursuit of a Gervonta Davis fight, well, you might as well stay at Matchroom because you're not going to get it. How many journalists, how many times over how many months have asked Gervonta the same question about Shakur, and he's not receptive to that fight? He doesn't want to do it. How much more obvious does it need to be? This shouldn't even be a talking point anymore. That situation aside, what other reasons might there be to stay at Matchroom? If nothing else, it's somebody in your corner who's obligated to promote you and get you fights. See, he doesn't have to stay with Matchroom at this point in the juncture due to his ongoing relationship with Turki El Sheikh. So long as Turki is still willing to use him and put him in his shows, then Shakur doesn't really need Matchroom. But that's so long as Turkey finds use for him. You don't know how often that's gonna be. Whereas if you stick it out with Matchroom, you can still work with Turkey. You can still box on his shows. And if for some reason Turkey doesn't want to use you, well, Matchroom can still get you fights. Still have a promotional commitment to you. One could argue that Shakur's relationship with Matchroom helped in part to facilitate the relationship with Turkey, that one sort of led to the other. So staying over there might not be a bad idea. I don't see a real reason for him to leave.
When we wanted the Loma fight, when it was in its prime, him and Mayweather, their team just, they just danced around it. When we wanted the Devin fight for Undisputed, the belts don't matter. I could just give them to my kids because everybody's winning belts. Shakur, he's easy work, he's boring, but you don't want to unify against him. Keyshawn might have a chance. You feel me? It's just disgusting. We wanted the Bud fight too after he called him out, and we also would have took a Teofimo Lopez fight. But then his fans would say, oh, but they're too big. They're not in his weight class. What the fuck is Jake Paul? This is the bullshit I be talking about. Like, this shit does nothing for the sport of boxing, but in terms of the division of 135, it doesn't do jack shit.
Noticeably frustrated caller calling into the boxing voice over the potentiality of Davis versus Jake Paul later on this year. He's right. I mean, it doesn't do jack shit for the division. It doesn't do jack shit for boxing. But when has Gervonta Davis ever been in the business of satisfying what the fans want? For years, they hounded him to face Vasyl Lomachenko when they were both at 130 and when they both moved up to 135. He only seems to have taken interest in him when he heard he was retiring. They hounded him for years to face Loma. Then when Loma lost to Tio, they hounded him to face Tio. Tio lost to George. Some people wanted to see him fight George. George loses to Devin. They want to see him fight Devin. Now they want to see him fight Shakur. And no dice. Little over a week ago when Jake Paul spoke to Ariel Helwani and let the world know there were talks for a fight between him and Gervonta, and those talks could resume if he beats Lamont. There wasn't enough outrage for my tastes. People weren't critical enough of Gervonta Davis, that you're in the same division as Keyshawn Davis, the same division as Shakur Stevenson, and this is what you want to do? This is the direction you're going in. For obvious reasons, he's under no threat of losing his unbeaten record to Jake Paul, because the fight with Jake Paul wouldn't be a fight. It would be an exhibition. That's according to Jake. So he gets to protect his O and simultaneously make a ton of money. And I imagine that afterwards, based on how much money he makes, he'd sail off into the sunset after that. I don't think he would keep fighting, and I don't think he would gamble his unblemished record against either Keyshawn or Shakur. No, he'd wrap it up. Because the other caveat is, Jake Paul is more popular than they are. You likely stand to make more, a lot more, with Jake Paul than you'd make fighting them. So, why fight them? I don't think he'd do it. Hell, the only reason he's fighting Lamont again is because he kinda has to. He has to redeem himself before he can move on to anything else. His stock took a hit. Stating the obvious, Gervonta Davis has never been in a business of giving the fans the fights that they want, and that's not about to change. Remember who his mentor is, Floyd Mayweather, who referred to his own fights as bank heists. What's even stranger is that Floyd fought in many big fights that the fans did want, like the De La Hoya fight, the Canelo fight, the Pacquiao fight. That's why those fights were so commercially successful, because those were fights that people wanted to see. The Sugar Shane Mosley fight, that fight did 1 million buys. Was purchased by 1 million households, did a great gate, like so many of Floyd's other fights, that these were fights that people wanted to see, and they showed up in the numbers. But that doesn't seem to be what he taught Gervonta Davis, whose pay-per-view sales pale in comparison to Floyd's. Hell, they pale in comparison to Canelo's. Gervonta Davis has only ever cracked more than 300,000 buys once with Ryan, and we all know why. That was because of Ryan. He hovers at around 200,000 buys with everybody else. Every other pay-per-view, and he's had a lot of them by now. Accenting that he's never been in the business of giving the fans the biggest fights or the best fights against the best opponents, because they've been around, and so is he. The way I see it, if he beats Lamont Roach and he fights Jake Paul after that and calls it a career, good riddance to bad rubbish. The sooner he's out of the sport, the better. And super middleweight news ahead of this weekend's fight, Caleb Plant says, if I ask someone to leave me alone, it's not a request, it's a demand. Caleb Plant is a man minding his own business and staying in his lane, but often, trouble has gravitated toward the Nashville-born super middleweight, the everyman superstar who has become a cult hero for his never-back-down mentality, no matter the odds. In July of 2023, before Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence fought in Vegas, Plant cracked Jermall Charlo with an open-hand slap as they argued in the bowels of the T-Mobile Arena when Charlo put his hand in Caleb Plant's face.
He shouldn't have done that. Now that seems to be the driver for their fight 2 years later. Can't say I'm all that enthused.
Nearly a year on, Edgar Berlanga got in his face back in Vegas, and they shared an angry exchange. And when Gervonta Davis and Frank Martin fought, Plant was somehow dragged into an altercation with Ryan Garcia and his henchmen at the MGM Grand. Plant did not give an inch on any occasion. Even before that, there was a pre-fight rumble with Canelo Alvarez and genuine bad blood with Anthony Durrell. But if Caleb is so hell-bent on just staying in his lane and minding his own business, why do people keep trying him?
Well, addressing the elephant in the room, it's because he's a white guy, and they figure that they can, that they'll get away with it.
Not necessarily like one of those Eastern Europeans. They don't like to mess about with them. They know better. And not like those Brits. They figure that because he's from the States, they can bully him. That's what their mentality is. I try to handle my business inside the ring, and I like to be left alone outside of the ring, Plant tells Boxing Scene. So as long as people leave me alone, I'll leave them alone, you know? It sounds simple enough, yet it's been too hard for many to compute. They have veered into his lane, discussed his business and even his family, but in doing so, Plant's inability to cower submissively has made him a hero to those who might have shrunk in similar circumstances.
But not all white boys are created equal. Caleb Plant's a country boy.
He's not gonna put up with no mess and put up with no shit from nobody, and in doing so, showing that character, he's endeared himself to the fans. Of course, he won't speak on what others might or might not do if faced with similar situations. Fight or flight is more reflex than flex. Until the circumstances face you, you won't know what is in you, like a fight. I feel like that's an individual question for each individual, but as far as I'm concerned, you know, I was raised a certain way by my grandfather and my father, and they stand on certain principles as far as what they believe and how they believe they should be treated. Plant adds, and being bullied or harassed is not high on our list of things that we like. And so, if I ask somebody to leave me alone, it's not really a request. You know what I'm saying? It's a demand.
Jermall Charlo thought it was a good idea to tug on Caleb Plant's beard, and Caleb quickly responded the way that he should. Open hand slap across the face, which is no less than Jermall deserved.
The next foot goes in front of the other at the Michelob Arena this Saturday night. Resendiz will be hoping to not Plant off both feet, but the Mexican is a prohibitive underdog. Plant is, again, the man with a target on his back. He has the Charlo fight waiting for him, and the bounty that contest would finally promise. Resendiz is merely in the supporting cast of the overall story, but the Mexican knows this is his chance to become a main character, and Caleb understands that too. This is the moment, Plant shrugs, and I remember what it was like for me my first big moment. How bad I wanted it, and how much I knew, like, man, if I get over this hump, if I get through this, which I know I will, then, man, my life's gonna change forever. And I'm assuming that he's feeling the same way, so I know how much he wants it, but it's not his time, it's not his moment. This isn't his story, it's my story. And May 31st, I'm gonna step on him for trying to mess up everything that I work towards. I'm gonna step on him. The danger for Caleb Plant, who in many ways is a more proven fighter than Resendiz, is Caleb characteristically gasses out after 6 or 7 rounds. His output slows, he's visibly tired, and this is in fights that he's winning,
let alone losing.
What leaves the door open for Resendiz to make things interesting in the second half of the fight. As you would expect from Plant, he's not excited to talk about Charlo. If they do get to it eventually, he will have more to say, but for now, it takes a couple of questions to even get a quiet rumble and a rise from Plant. He has business at hand first, and Charlo is not it. It's not something I'm thinking about too much right now, Plant says, shaking his head. You know, there's been so many fighters who have been in the same situation. It's like they put them on the same card, they both win that fight, Then they got the super fight. They got the mega fight. And there always seems to be, not always, but too many times where one person is focusing on that big fight and not the fight in front of them. All fights are big fights. All fights are tough fights. There are no easy fights. There are fights you can make easy, but no fight is easy. And training camp isn't easy, and the sacrifices aren't easy. So I need to focus on the task in front of me right now. I need to focus on the fight in front of me. I'm gonna step on him May 31st, and then there'll be plenty of time to talk about Charlo. Think about Charlo. Prepare for Charlo. Whatever the situation, whatever the case may be. But right now, I need to focus on the task at hand, because focus is what gets the job done. Would he like the opportunity to step on Charlo, though? If he makes it to the ring, I'll step on him too, Plant adds, happily enough. I've stepped on him once, I'll step on him again. But for now, Caleb Plant is minding his own business and staying in his lane, as he should. Now, I want to say that the Boxing Scene article, this one, was actually a lot longer. So long, I had to leave certain parts out, and I've noticed that now that Boxing Scene is under new ownership, the articles have become rather long-winded.
It's nothing against Tristix, and I say this with the best of intentions, that if a sit-down interview covers this many bases, you want to relegate that to a video interview that you upload to Boxing Scene's YouTube channel and just condense it for the articles, because people don't read as much as they used to, and attention spans aren't what they used to be.
Just cover the relevant particulars in association with the fight in the article, and cover all the other stuff in a video interview. Just a suggestion.
The fight.
This weekend's bill is not a pay-per-view, nor should it be. But the idea that after that, should Charlo win his fight and Caleb win his, that you're gonna pay $80 to see them fight each other based on an altercation close to 2 years ago in a parking lot?
Neither of the Better Beef versus Bivol fights costed that.
Conor Benn and Chris Eubank have more bad blood between each other than Caleb and Jamal have between each other, and their fight didn't cost that much. It's also important to add that their fight delivered in a way that a lot of other fights don't. So when I think about having to pay $80 to see Caleb and Jamal, that's not value for money, folks. Jamal Charlo's career has no traction. This is a quasi-retired fighter who periodically pops up to beat a guy he's supposed to beat, then goes back into hibernation.
Caleb, I can think of so many more interesting situations for Caleb than fighting today's Jamal Charlo. I would rather see Caleb fight Christian Mabili or Jaime Munguia, Diego Pacheco, Edgar Berlanga.
I'm not stuck on a Jamal Charlo fight. That's not a big fight to me. That's not a mega match. That's not something I've been asking for.
But to make it there, he's got to make it past Resendiz. And what I remember about
Resendiz beat the hell out of Jarrett Hurd a couple of fights ago. Then he got beat by Elijah Garcia. He has since moved up in weight. He's at super middleweight now. Close quarters fighter whose best punches are his bent arm punches. The danger for Caleb is that he may be doing well at the start, but if he gasses out in the middle, Resendiz might catch up to him and put it on him.
If a guy's already tired, it doesn't take a whole lot to hurt him, and like I said, Caleb characteristically slows down in the middle.
So things could get interesting on Saturday. We'll talk more about it as the fight date approaches.